Graham Sutherland's, in particular this one I like. I like them all, but the Somerset Mom, which is 1954-55. What do you like about Somerset Mom, or do you?
Well,
or what do you like about Graham Sutherland, I should say?
Well, I guess I could say I grew up with this stuff because, I mean, I looked at this from the time almost that it arrived here until, you know, while I was a student. And I think I got to appreciate Sutherland backwards because, of course, I think that the portraits were his later works and the earlier works were more abstract.
The forms things.
The forms.
Well, this is the same period. This is 54, and although.
So there was a schizophrenia in his work.
Yeah. Well, he did this. You know, but he was born in 1903, died in 1980. So this one, I was living in England at that time in 1954, so I was very familiar with all of them. But
see, I don't understand where he's coming from because I don't have the art history behind me, except that he seemed very, very independent from most of the art movements in Britain at the time. So he was very original. His war art was mostly on papers.
Because he was in War Commission.
Yes, program, and he also did the Miners in Wales.
Which is Beaverbrook again.
Yeah. So what I find interesting from looking at his total is the way he transferred his drawings, because he did actually do transfers.
Well, you can see what I'm saying.
He carries it through. He carries it through from the non-objective to the very specifically rendered portraiture. I mean, the grids.
Yeah, you can see it really particularly in one of our Beaverbrook upstairs, but it's kind of interesting because there's no composition, like there's all that top space there, which is kind of odd. But
well, do you think that was planned, or is that?
I don't think it was planned at all.
No, it looks like he. I mean, I've seen photographs of him with a canvas parked against the back of the chair.
Yeah.
You know, doing a sketch. He worked from life, mostly, and of course the larger paintings were done from were composites from some of the earlier head studies. I think he worked toward from the head to the sword figure.
Yeah. More of these pictures of Churchill down here.
Well, they're beautiful in themselves. I mean, one thing I like with Sutherland is he's a master of surface. You know,
I think he is too. Yeah.
He managed to create a great deal with very little.
But you know, with the surface, I think when you're talking about the master of surface, he reminds me of this Bacon. You know,
Francis Bacon.
Yeah, because you have the same scrub surface, you know, which is.
Wasn't Bacon? Didn't Bacon take over where Sutherland left?
I would think, yeah.
Historically.
But I mean, certainly, but it's very much like Bacon's, you know.
The surface.
Actually,
almost raw canvas.
You know, the raw canvas, dry surface, you know, and but they're damn painterly, and they're all from, you say, from life, and then you'll scale them up. You can see the grid. Look how fine the grid is on that one. You know?
Yeah.
And then.
But he transferred his most abstract works that way.
Yeah.
And so he worked the same technique. A matter of preference. I guess it's an artistic choice or a formula that he chose. I think he just he relied so heavily upon his drawings that he needed to make them accurate. I mean, there's a lot of aberration that if you use projected sketches and things. So.
Yeah, well, but I mean, he was working a lot from life, so I mean, obviously, but then he scaled them up. So he's working from life, and
there's a bit of the artifact in the work, though. I mean,
but this is an odd painting. This is Lady Eaton, you know, which is a strange painting at night in relation to the rest of these. But
well, you can see the influence of the abstraction, his background coming through in the division of the space behind these figures. I mean, what's the purpose of these lines? Yeah.
Well, even here these lines, but I mean, it's a very shallow surface. But he spares no. He's certainly not making any Somerset Maugham look glamorous. You know, there's no glamour.
I don't know. Isn't it reputed that he didn't really like his work? Somerset Maugham, he hated his work.
Well, Lady Churchill didn't like the work. Churchill didn't like the work, but people still got painted by him. The Queen, everybody. I mean, but even look how prissy Sackville West looks.
Edward, yes.
Yeah, looking a little prissy. So yeah, he doesn't glorify people at all.
No, they're technically they're beautiful works. And of course, there's the famous cigar that Karsh had fun with.
Yeah. So
this sketch of Helen Rubinstein is really quite direct, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
there's
almost
another
graphic.
one. They have another one.
You know.
It's on tour, I think, which is she's looking a little bit older in that one. This one, she's got all her makeup on.
It's a very large work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one, but
I think that his composition means I can see evidence in his compositions, even on the large works, where he's really started on a hunch and then had to modify the surrounding space to make the composition, especially in the Rubinstein work.
But it's interesting. He's got
almost
this
cut off.
high head space like all the time. Like the same time down here, he's got this big space up in the head space as he has in the Somerset. Even there.
He must have been a short guy, wasn't he?
Either that or you say he's got the painting leading. I don't know what the story is.
Maybe.
Because nominally you would have
That's odd. That isn't, I didn't, yes, you're
you
right.
can see like here, he's got it right, and here he's got it right. And there, it's sort of like he's drawing, he's not taking into consideration
Do you know
the
what?
shape of the canvas.
Typically, he uses vertical rectangles. He seems to prefer them.
Actually, they're all vertical, aren't they? They're all vertical rectangles, aren't
But
they?
even his abstracted works are like that. I think.
You're right. I mean, that's a square, that one, but they're all rectangular. They can easily be square. I mean, this could easily be a square painting, but they're not. So I mean.
So what do you think, Virgil? What do you think his legacy is in terms of carrying figurative art forward?
I think he carries. I think he did a pretty good job. I think he's. I know Freud looked at him.
Freud definitely.
And so he's got, and the other thing, and the unforgiving part of it, which is pretty interesting, pretty much, so he paints it like he sees them.
He paints it as it is.
And Freud's got, it was a lot more painterly than Sutherland.
But not originally.
No.
Freud's works originally.
Well, the one they don't have upstairs anymore, they have on tour, but the early Freud's were
Hotel room.
Hotel rooms.
Of the 50s.
I think he's pretty, I don't know, and the subdued color is I like too. I mean, just imagine, look how he builds up the paint on this little study. It's pretty interesting. You said you saw Tom with him painting one time? Did you say you saw, was there a photograph or something you saw?
Of him actually working.
Yeah.
With the model. Yeah, he was.
Is it a film or just
No, it's just a photograph. He's got painting in a chair and he's bent hunched over and he's painting the model sitting. And it's just a head sketch. One thing I like about his work, he looks like he really enjoyed himself.
Yeah.
On the other hand, like I say, what was his legacy in terms of figurative art? Well, he does carry a tradition forward.
Yeah.
Through some of the major influences in Britain in the 50s and the 60s. I mean, that must have been a very pivotal time. And I've heard that Sutherland's reputation kind of was peaked along with Winston Churchill's, right?
Yeah.
And that they were both forgotten together, and hence the fact that nobody came along until Francis Bacon that actually filled his shoes. But during his lifetime, he was hugely influential.
Oh, I think so, and I think that's true. The Bacon.
I think the Brits do the best portraiture.
Well, they have
Overall.
Since the 18th century.
I don't know what it is in the culture or in their early influences. I mean, there's certainly a lot of early antecedents for portraiture, but for some reason the psychology they just seem to do such a good job. I mean, how many British portraitists do you know? Augustus John, and some of the lesser knowns like Ambrose McAvoy, which the collection here has a number, are beautiful paintings. Yeah. They carry a kind of a painterliness tradition forward, but Sutherland's work brings forth a newer age of paint handling, a minimalist kind of.
Well, we were talking about lunch, because they got the pickup when Anthony Van Dyck lived at the time of Charles II, and then gone to and before that Holbein, but who also painted Henry VIII, and painted the British court.
So yeah,
but then you picked up your own.
There's been an homage to factual.
But it was Flemish influence on British painting, and then in the 18th century it was Reynolds and in Gainsborough, etc.
Yeah, okay. So I guess that's what I get from a lot of this work too, the kind of the presence of history and tradition throughout.
I think the presence of history is good. I think that, you know, I think that it makes some sense that it's a tradition, presence of history, which is good. And I see that as an important part of what we're looking at. And I don't know who's following that tradition in portraiture in England now. Anybody? I mean,
I think there are a couple of modern painters, a couple of women that I can't recall their names.
Yeah. But I mean, certainly not Hockney, but Hockney did portraiture.
No.
Hockney
He was a popper.
Yeah, he's certainly not in a category as a draftsman. Should follow his own advice with the camera.
No, you're right.
You know, I think, but the draftsman quality of this kind of thing. Well, he trained as a printmaker, you know, like he wanted to go to the slate, but couldn't get into slates, so he went to goldsmiths.
Right.
And took a printmaking and did paint.
That explains the thinness of his earlier works. Watercolor and gouache, on paper.
Yeah. He didn't start painting until he was in his 30s.
Yeah.
But he was a printmaker. But I haven't seen a lot of his prints.
He painted through the war. I mean, that certainly must have had an influence on him.
Well, they're kind of, you know, they were these war paintings he was doing with the commission.
I don't know, his description of the sound of tinkling glass is, you know.
Yeah, oh, and the bombing.
Yeah, after the bomb, you know.
Yeah, because he had a perfect timing because he missed World War I, and he was too old to be in World War II because he was like 36, 39. So.
Now, what's interesting too is the collection that the Beaverbrook has built up around this work. I mean, there's so many works that